Hi there, my name is Philip Wilkes. This video will take a look at my FIEA capstone project called Escherreal in terms of the level design and level building work that I did for that game. So for starters, we'll take a quick look at Escherreal. So what is it? It's an MC Escher themed video game with 3D platforming and puzzles. So the mirror marble is our mechanic that allows us to change gravity. So if you think about it, if you're in a standard room with 4 walls, a ceiling, and a floor, you can use the mirror marble to change gravity to any of those surfaces and walk on them. So if you think about it, you can already see that that's a very interesting challenge from a level design perspective, because really if the player can go anywhere, you have to account for them going everywhere. Our other main mechanic are the InfiniSpecs, which allow the 3D environment to be flattened to 2D, which will allow the player to advance as a 2D platformer, like Mario, and then change back to 3D, and then be on a different plane, or a different box, or perhaps they could use it to cross a large chasm. So if you want to learn more about Escherreal, you can either go to Escherreal.com, which takes us to our Steam page where we have screenshots and video footage of the entire game, as well as development diaries. Or you can go over to the games user story on my website, and there's a link that will take you there as well. So, let's talk about our level design process for Escherreal, because, being a puzzle game, we need to make sure our puzzles were fun and approachable, so we had kind of a very long process for our level design, but I think it turned out well in the end. Our design lead would give us design homework, sometimes with constraints, sometimes blue sky, just to see what we could come up with based around a specific mechanic or a specific type of puzzle we wanted to do. So we'd all come up with designs, right, and design them either on paper or in some cases in Unity. Later in the project we would actually kind of build things in VForge itself. But once we had all those done, we'd meet and have a puzzle review. We'd look at everyone's stuff, and kind of pick out the most unique and the most fun, the most creative things that we wanted to have in the game. And then we would take those and do another round of design homework. Then after that, we have a second puzzle review, where we do the same thing. We look at everybody's deliverables, and we see, okay, this is a really cool kind of feature, and we really like that, but here someone else came up with these 2 rooms that flow together real nice. That's kind of cool. And then we have a meeting to nail down what our unified design would be. And once we have our unified design, we plan that out, where all the little puzzle elements are, how to traverse through the environment. Then we actually build it. And that's where I really came in, because I was the primary level builder. So I would go into the engine and create a mock-up of it. And then we could test it and tweak a few little things there. And then we would present it in our weekly status updates. We get feedback from the professors, feedback from each other, talk to the programmers and the artists, see contextually how much work would be involved to really bring that area to life. Then it would go in one of 2 directions. If it was a functional design, then it would go into an art and functionality pass. The programmers would start working on, and the scripters to a certain degree would start working on the specific mechanical features that we needed for it, like we need the ability to line up the InfiniSpecs across this entire room so that we can create a platforming puzzle within the room, right? Or perhaps there's, on the scripting side, there's a specific trigger event that we need, or we have a mini game here that needs to be done. Our artists would then start building the art assets for it. Furniture like beds, couches, clocks, specifics for whatever we needed for the puzzle, maybe architectural plans, that sort of thing. Now, if the design that we presented was not up to par, it would basically be chop-chopped where the ideas and the features in it that we really liked would then be taken out, and we would go back to design homework and design a new level. The best example of that cycle I have is when we were designing what you see in the final version of our game with Escher's Villa. Originally, this was the first iteration of what you see. This was our, phase A, which is the beginning of our game. Teaches the player how to use the basic mechanic, the mirror marble. And we're kind of taking inspiration from Escher's Still Life in Street. Originally, we were just kind of going for like a generic Escher's apartment, like what you see if you watch our vertical slice presentation on our website. It's basically a simple square room within another room, and you have kind of different rooms on each of the walls. So you can go to one wall and it's themed after a bedroom, or you could go to another wall, it's themed after a library. But that was didn't really have the feel of Escher. So when designing Phase A, which you see on the left, we were trying to get inspiration from one of Escher's pieces. So Still Life in Street we thought would be a pretty cool idea, with the ability for the player to, walk around on the sides of buildings and even kind of drop down into windows and walk across shops, even fly back and forth across the street through windows. So we thought that was a really cool idea, so we started to do the mock-up that you see over on the left. And it got through the full cycle up until the presentation point, where we realized programmatically it wouldn't really be too difficult, but art-wise, we didn't really have the resources to make it look good. Now, if you read any of the other Escherreal stuff on my site, the fact is we had only really 2 artists for the entire project out of a team of 15 people. So their time was extremely valuable. So we knew we had to nail down the design to give them a solid asset list that we wouldn't change, so that we could, use their time most effectively. And, doing Still Life in Street, we would have to have a bunch of shops of different things. Like perhaps there would be, an architectural business or something like that with drafting tables and things like that. Maybe flower shop, other things you would find, furniture store maybe. So it would end up being a lot of unique assets we'd have to create to populate an environment like that. So that was chop-chopped and taken into a very different environment. Now, after one of our design homeworks, we realized one of our producers had created kind of a puzzle area where it was very much like Escher's Ascending and Descending, which you now see on the right. It was very kind of square and box shaped, but we really liked it because the player would be able to go back and forth between different rooms, but at different orientations. So there might be, say, an upside down door accessible by the roof, and the player would have to find a way around the building and change gravity to the roof so that you could cross through that door and go into a different room. And it turns out that Escher's Ascending and Descending, being an illusion, we have that very square-shaped building that is extremely recognizable from Escher's work. So we decided to do an iteration of that. So based on those puzzles, we built a version of Ascending and Descending out of our modular assets. And then we ended up, at the end of the day, with what you see in this picture on the left in the final version of our game. So, how did we do that? Well, the Havok Vision Engine, unlike Unity or UDK, does not have any primitive assets in it. Like, in Unity I can just go make cubes and spheres and stuff like that and stack stuff on top of each other relatively easily. UDK, you got the brush tools, so you can build stuff pretty easily with that, plus a ton of, Unreal Tournament assets that you can use just making prototypes. Unity doesn't have, anything. But I think something called a Magic Ball, which was a blue sphere, and a few other, kind of almost random tutorial assets, but almost nothing to start building the levels with. So we realized pretty quickly that we wanted assets that we could actually go in there and play around and kind of mock up things within the engine. So we ended up using Unity to prototype a lot of stuff in the beginning. But once we decided on our design for the vertical slice level, we decided we wanted, modular assets for walls and stairs and things like that. Now, it just so happens our project lead was in the architecture industry for many, many years, so he built up this modular dimension plan to give the artists so that we could create these modular pieces, which the producers could then use to build things in the engine. The thought process was good, because we only had 2 artists, so they could make these modular pieces. We could make as many levels as we wanted, and the artist could then concentrate on furniture and other assets for very specific puzzles where we needed things to look right. The problem is that you can already tell that this environment using modular pieces is very plain, very boring, whereas Escher's works are all perspective based. They're all interesting. You got stairs going everywhere. It wasn't really giving us the feel of Escher's work.